Starting off a busy few days of uploads, the Washington Justice are the side who I'll be looking at today as part of my Overwatch League 2020 team previews. With community power rankings starting to be released, I found it very interesting to see the polarising opinions that people have had specifically on Washington, with some ranking them within the top 6, whilst I've seen others rate them closer to the bottom 5. So, with their star DPS player Corey front and centre, are the Justice a team who we should see as legitimate playoff contenders? Or instead, is this squad one which he's going to have to carry from the bottom half of the standings? Entering the league as one of 8 new expansion sides, Washington had very low expectations due to their squad being made up of a strange mix of perceivably subpar Korean talent, alongside 3 Americans being Corey, Stratus and Phasix. Initial power rankings had them right at the very bottom alongside Florida, and for the first 3 stages they appeared to prove many right in this evaluation, as the Justice went 1 and 6 in both Stage 1 and Stage 2, before somehow getting even worse in Stage 3 where they joined the 0 and 7 club. But when 2-2-2 Rollock was introduced for Stage 4, the Justice, and in particular Corey, were finally able to show off their true quality and potential. This stage would see them turn things around completely, going 6-1, with their only loss coming to the Atlanta Reign, who themselves would end up going 7-0. Whilst it had been a tremendous end to the season, the damage caused by the opening 3 stages was way too much to overcome, so Washington ended the regular season with a record of 8-20, but saw them finish 17th in the overall standings. Obviously the Justice will be looking to build upon their great ending to last season, to avoid returning to their early 2019 slump. So let's now take a look at what they've done with their roster heading into 2020. At DPS, Corey and Stratus are back as the only remaining original members of the side, but their former teammate Ado has been released. Taking his spot is one of their new signings, Tuba, who comes from Bubble Burster Gaming in Chinese contenders. Moving on to the tanks, the late 2019 pickups of Lolsish and Elivote are back, and this time hoping to get on stage, but last season's starters of Janus and Sansom have gone. In terms of their replacements, the team has made only one acquisition, being Raw, who they signed from the LA Gladiators. Lastly is the support position, which has seen the most upheaval over the course of this off-season. Ark is the only player kept on for 2020, with Sleepy, Guido and Hyonu all becoming free agents. In their places, only one player has again been picked up, and this time it's AimGod who joins in the Boston Uprising. Looking at this roster, we can see that the team has offloaded roughly half of their 2019 lineup, and then brought in a single addition each position. This suggests to me that the team really wants to focus on developing a smaller squad of their better players, rather than keeping a larger one that previously had players they probably saw as more like dead weight. This approach will likely have been led and directed by Washington's new staff, with this off-season seeing Borland join as general manager, and also John Galt coming in as head coach. With John Galt replacing Wizardtiong, the team is bringing in a head coach who has enjoyed success on the LA Gladiators last year, and from a couple of interviews I've seen from him, he already sounds like he has quite a regimented plan in place to ensure Washington are successful in 2020, something which should be a cause for optimism. That said, given how the Justice were really finding their feet within 2-2 at the end of 2019, John Galt not only needs to try and get that same level of performance out of his players moving forward, but at the same time, he also needs to make sure his philosophy and team direction doesn't end up negatively impacting the team's previous momentum, especially from their stars like Corey. And speaking of Corey, I think it'd be a good idea if I now started to look at the 2020 squad in more detail, and beginning at DPS, I'll start by discussing the man himself. Corey was undoubtedly the real breakout star towards the end of last season, with a number of high quality displays, especially on heroes like Widowmaker, which filled the highlight reels. And to me, he was without question the main factor in Washington going on to finish Stage 4 with a 6-1 record. He followed up this fantastic end to the Overwatch League season with another dominant performance on Team USA at the Overwatch World Cup, where I thought he was very unlucky not to receive the MVP award. It's pretty clear that as long as he's able to play as hit scan heroes and never touch Zarya again, he's likely to be one of the league's top performers in 2020. But if last year highlighted anything, it showed that one star player can only get you so far, and that Justice's season will depend more on the players around Corey being able to assist him, and indeed step up if needed to themselves. Stratus came into the starting lineup later last year, but he did an excellent job pairing alongside Corey, even if most of his playtime was spent on Mei. He's already shown that he has great synergy alongside Corey, and for much of Stage 4, I thought he did really well, even if he was clearly overshadowed by how well Corey was performing. I think a good analysis of Stratus would be to compare him to a player like Doha when he was playing on Element Mystic. Someone who performs consistently well and has his pop-off moments, but primarily is able to assist his star partner Sparkle, or in this case Corey, shine even brighter. Corey and Stratus have a lot of potential as a pairing, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself, as we've only seen them play within the whole hook meta. And whilst I expect Corey to adapt to whatever comes his way in 2020 after his performance at the Overwatch World Cup, I'm more cautious about how Stratus will do when he's asked to play a wider hero pool. This though is where I reckon Tuba will come into the equation as another flex DPS option. Admittedly, I haven't seen much of his play, but from what I have heard, he's particularly strong on projectile heroes like Pharah and Genji. His quality won't be proven until he gets an opportunity on stage, but as a trio, I think Washington can be relatively happy with how their DPS line looks heading into next season. However, a lot will depend on Corey playing up to his all-star level, as well as Stratus or Tuba being able to fill in consistently and effectively alongside him if the Justice want to be considered a serious playoff threat. Whilst I'm quite confident with the team's DPS line, it's their tanks where I probably have the biggest concerns. Don't get me wrong, I really like the tank duo of Lolfish and Elivo, having followed their play in European contenders on Angry Titans, and I think they have a lot of potential, especially given their amazing synergy with one another, having known each other since they were kids. My issue though is the fact that they are without a doubt unproven at the Overwatch League level. Given the quality of players at the tank position throughout the league, we will find out very quickly how good these guys are compared to their competition, although I must say I do worry a little after the Overwatch World Cup, where against this sort of competition, the pair and particularly Lolfish was really inconsistent, but I'm willing to give them a slight pass for this. It's important to think about how Raw is going to fit in as well, even if like Tuba, I'd be very surprised if he got the initial start, given the existing synergy between Lolfish and Elivo. Raw had a very odd past year on the Gladiators, where at times he showed sparks of real potential, but more often than not just looked average, and at times even quite poor. Hopefully this new opportunity and environment for him sees him play at a more consistent quality level, but that remains to be seen. In terms of him playing though, by the sounds of it he'll be coming in for specific strategies or styles according to John Galt, which could give this team a really good level of adaptability and flexibility. On the other hand though, it does risk worsening an already unknown tank line if he isn't able to develop or mesh with Elivo. This is where I have my other main issue with the tank line, as whilst in my opinion Lolfish and Elivo are an upgrade over Janus and Sansam, I think the lack of a second off-tank option could hurt them down the line if Elivo struggles himself, or indeed if he declines when Raw is brought into the lineup. Regardless of how hard Corey may try to carry this team, the consistency and stability of Washington's tank line will ultimately determine whether or not the Justice can mount a serious push for the playoffs or not, and this is the position group that I recommend you keep the closest eye on in the opening weeks of the season, as it certainly has potential, but it comes with quite a few questions. Finally, we need to visit the supports, and interestingly, this is the only part of the squad which has no backups or depth, with Ark and AimGod being the only options, and thus the starters. Ark enjoyed an okay 2019 on the side, but he certainly didn't live up to many expectations following his time on New York. His UCO play early on in the season was very inconsistent, but it's hard to tell whether that was more a product of the team's struggles, or whether it was more his personal fault. His play towards the end of the season did pick up, and particularly showings on Baptiste looked a lot better, but it begs the question as to what level of play we can expect from him next season. Will we see him playing at his past best, that saw many think of him as one of the better main supports in the league, or has he now become a little meta-dependent, and therefore is perhaps a liability moving forward? Of course, a big determining factor in this discussion is how his partnership alongside AimGod turns out. The constant switching of Sleepy and Guido last season was probably not great, and with Ark and AimGod being the only two options, you would hope they're able to build a strong support synergy. AimGod has been a weird player to rate over the past year, as when he's played he's often looked really good, especially on Zenyatta, with many pointing out his high ceiling of potential. But then he seemed to fall out with Boston's staff, which saw him benched despite being undoubtedly better than his replacement Persia. Within this new system, you would hope he's able to develop his talents further, as he has the potential to be a really good flex support in the league, and at his worst I think he's still a similar level to Guido or Sleepy. I'm a little concerned though that his issues on Boston might have been more a result of personal attitude problems, and if this is the case, a repeat of these issues could be a real detriment to Washington's challenge in 2020. Whilst I'm hopeful for what this pair can achieve, I believe that the Justice are taking a big risk by having no backup option for either player, as if the worst should happen, a support line, which already looks a little volatile, would be in crisis, and this is a situation I think Corey would have no chance to save the team from. Bringing everything together, I think that at their best, Washington have the potential to challenge for a playoff or play-in spot in 2020, but a lot will rest on the shoulders of the players around Corey to contribute effectively if this is to come to fruition. I like a lot of the moves the Justice have made this off-season, but I do think there's a risk that there will be volatility and inconsistency at both tank and support, which could do just as much harm as the potential good and upside they may bring. This is why I think right now I'm not able to rate them inside the top 10, as there are just too many questions that need answering before I can be fully behind this team. I think it's important to point out, well, whilst this team did go 6-1 in Stage 4, their strength of schedule wasn't the strongest, and I worry some people are getting too caught up with Corey's performances and the team's Stage 4 record without looking at the wider context. For sure, Washington have promise, and a high number of homestands could be a major benefit for them this season. But right now, for me, I think they're going to fall short of being a true playoff contender, as I don't think Corey can carry them that far, with the current level of talent around him. But we'll have to wait and see. For now, however, that's all I've got to say on the Washington Justice ahead of the Overwatch League 2020 season, and if you have reached the end of the video, then I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, then please be sure to like, subscribe and follow me on my Twitter or at my Discord so you don't miss out on future videos, such as my Vancouver Titans video, which I hope will be out later today. But until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.